silent no more. I'm done fighting this war. What I feel in weakness is something worth fighting for. Silent no more. I'm unlocking the door. If strength is being honest, then I'm stronger than before.
Good evening, and welcome to Silent No More. Tonight begins a brand new series that I believe is going to help a lot of people put words to experiences they've carried in silence for years. This series isn't about diagnosing people or attacking anyone. It's about recognizing unhealthy patterns, understanding how these and those experiences affect us, and help heal people. Tonight's episode is called Walking on Eggshells. Have you ever felt like one word could ruin the whole day? Have you ever carefully chosen every sentence because you didn't know what reaction you were going to get? If so, this conversation is for you. I'm excited to have Elena Rodriguez joining me tonight. Throughout this series, she's going to be making an appearance. There she is right now with a credible perspective on healing, relationships, and finding yourself again after difficult experience. Welcome, Elena. How you doing?
I'm doing wonderful and so excited for this series that you're doing because this topic needs discussed again and again and again. So thanks for having me.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for, you know, contributing your professional and personal experiences and perspectives. And we're looking forward to getting into it.
There we go. Let's do it.
All right. So when you hear the phrase walking on eggshells, what does it mean to you?
Anxiety. Walking on eggshells to me feels like your mood is dependent on somebody else. You just never know if you're going to be high, if you're going to be low. It's just anxiety, just this constant like fear. That's actually what I physically still feel when I think of walking on eggshells. That's what it means to me.
If you still feel it, how do you know when you're actually doing it? If that makes any sense.
Because I pause, like I already like think in my head, do I actually say this or do I need to change what I'm going to say because it's going to trigger this? Like I'm not present in my own being. I'm literally thinking in my head, what is my next step? Because if it's the wrong one, then things are going to blow up. And so that's where you don't even trust yourself because you're constantly thinking, do I say this right now? If I say this right now, am I going to say this in a way that's not going to be misinterpreted? I mean, it's just this constant stress that I feel you just carry with you, and it just gets heavy and heavy.
Well, good point. You said that you carry it with you. So I guess you can, when would you say, or what type of relationships that you've experienced this in? Is it dating, parent relationships, friends at work? What type of relationships could you, or have you experienced these in?
There's quite a few. The first one that will pop up like at the top of my head, of course, is in, dating, marriage, romantic relationship, where your partner is very, very close and intimate. That's the first one that like pops in my head. But I have had bosses in the past, like leader, they call themselves leaders, but they're really there to be ego driven and power hungry. And so that environment, in a working environment, I have felt it. Teachers, I'll never, like second grade, I will never forget my teacher. Her name was Mrs. Eisenhower. But not even understanding what it was at that time. But I think that that's one of the layers of where I became afraid to ask questions because because I remember, like distinctly, I remember one time going up to her desk, I needed to ask a question and she like slammed and yelled. And so I just was on eggshells, like all of second grade. So I have experienced it in, with bosses, in a corporate environment, in relationships, and even with my sons. And I'll tell you, with my sons now, because of that toxic relationship, and it's amazing at the conversations that we've had, but they've picked up traits And so, you know, over the years, we've become very aware and we're able to communicate about it. But in the beginning, like none of us knew what was going on. And there were times my son would say something and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm in this trauma state right now. So all over. Yeah.
No, great point. Great segue, because you mentioned your son, and you know, with Yara checking in, we're going to be talking about sons in another week or so.
Yeah.
But we're talking about sons, and especially with you being a mom, initially the behaviors, right? Because initially you didn't know it was, you know, narcissistic tendencies or behavior patterns or whatever the case may be. So initially, what did you think it was, and how did you get to the point where you were able to identify the different narcissistic tendencies at every level, right? Because it's not just in personal relationships, it's in working relationships, it's in each one of those. But to be able to notice it within your own child, how was you able to identify with that and then course correct?
Well, to be very honest, as much as you see the word narcissist and all of that stuff flying around now, back when I was married, I never knew about it. I never heard about it. So I'm gonna be honest. All the time that we were together, I just thought he was a moody asshole, and that's and that's what I called it. I'm like, you're just being a moody asshole, and it was like, you know, this is my network, so we can cuss, okay?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And but I just was like, oh my gosh, is he bipolar? Is he depressed? Like what is it? Because I never knew if we were going to have a good day or a bad day, but I just thought he was moody and that he just was in a bad mood half the time. And so until the years go by and I realized the damage that I was really absorbing. I mean, so then after he died and all of this stuff happened is when I needed help to deal with all of the emotions that were coming through, that I started learning about narcissistic disorder. So that's very different. Like that's the major disorder. And so when I became more educated in that, and then I would be able to talk to my sons about it, it wasn't until we were in like real life situations. And so like one of the first ones, we were at a restaurant, but we were with family. It was like a holiday, but we all went to a restaurant, and just the way that my son said something like back to me, I welted up in tears and I got hot and I got sweaty. So I was physically feeling like this fear reaction, and it freaked me out because I'm like, this is my son. So what's happening here? And I avoid confrontation at all costs. I will absorb things to not upset anyone because I walk on eggshells. So that part of my son that is very communicative, but he's also very literal and to the point. So even if he's telling a joke, it's very dry. You don't know. And so I was taking him literally as like an insult. And so it really, that one moment opened up all kinds of conversation of me even needing to tell him now, like, look, if you need to talk to me or text me and you say, I need to talk to you, I'm like, let me know everything's good. It's, you know, because I automatically shut, like, I still feel those effects of feeling like, oh my gosh, am I in trouble? What did I do? Are we going to be fighting? Do I need to go hide? I mean, and this is with my sons. Yeah.
Right. No, those are all great points, especially when you say you're having to change your tone, replaying the conversation over and over again, trying to figure out, you know, what went wrong. But so at some point, because you mentioned not being confrontational, so not necessarily solving the problems, but kind of just pushing forward and moving through. Did you find that to be beneficial or to be enabling that behavior at some point, or was it ever identified?
It's a total enabling. I see that now. It's a total enabling because people can't read your mind. Right. So if you're feeling a certain way, but you're not able to say it. Now, I will say in the beginning of that marriage, I would bring up things and it always ended up in a fight, and always is a harsh word, but I would say probably 98% of the time I knew the pattern. In the beginning, I didn't know the pattern. So in the beginning, it just always seemed like a fight and nothing ever got resolved. And it only got fixed if I backed down and just either apologized or said, you know what, you're right. I don't know what I was thinking. Like that was in the beginning. And so to try to talk things through and I never felt better. I always ended up feeling like however I was feeling that I wanted to talk through ended up being wrong. And so then I ended up apologizing. And so knowing that this was becoming a cycle that I could actually see, I just kept it in. And so it was enabling. And I think I got to a point where because I recognized the pattern, and if anybody has been through this, maybe the pattern was the same as yours, but there would be the thing, we would bring it up, it would turn into an argument, we would try to prove each other's points, it would never be seen. He would then ignore me for like 3 days. By then, I quit trying to have a conversation. So then I would shut down. And then that lasted like a day. And then he'd come back and say, like, what the F's your problem?
Right.
And I mean, that's honestly, you know,
Right,
and then I'd be like, I don't have a problem. But then by then he was ready to talk and then we'd make up and it was all great. And it was just this freaking cycle. And,
wash, rinse, repeat, huh? Wash, rinse, repeat.
Yeah. So I don't know if anybody else had the wash, rinse, repeat cycles, but for me, I knew it, you know, and so then we'd get to a point where anything like a roundabout, you know, roundabouts so we, for some reason in our town, they were doing construction in a lot of different intersections. So roundabouts were like going everywhere and nobody knew how to use them right. Everybody's like, do we go? Do we not? And so I was trying to draw this like diagram because I lived in a city where there were roundabouts all over the place. And I'm like, no, like the outside lane verges off I'm trying to describe, and that turned into a fight. So I'm like, everything turns into a fight. So over the years, I just absorbed it. I just absorbed it because I thought I'm going to be wrong or I'm going to be apologizing. And so when you pack it down and you just take it in, it does come out somewhere.
Right.
And that's kind of the pattern that I lived in for a lot of years.
So, and it's interesting, right? Because you talk about patterns. And so as a coach, I often talk to people about patterns, and it's easy to identify the patterns, once you start to look for them. And then once you identify the patterns, I guess then it just depends on, each other in the relationship. But as far as for what's the way ahead, because if you see a pattern and it's taking you to that same trajectory, then why aren't, you taking another path, right? So I just try to, suggest to people to do simple things like journaling, that way they can kind of remember what they're doing. Because a lot of times in those arguments, like you said, you're trying to prove somebody right, wrong, or indifferent, and you're not even actually talking about what the actual situation is, and that's what I found, through coaching and talking to a lot of people, especially men, because one of the things that men often say is that it's no change behavior. Yeah. Like you said, the patterns, they can identify and say, hey, look, this is what you've been doing for, 3 to 6 months. I've tried to identify, and you're not receptive to hearing it. And a lot of times I think because it's been such a role reversal, especially with men trying to take a more softer general approach, because everybody says, that narcissistic mentality of rah, 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 and getting things done. It's almost like, well, trying to take that approach is not necessarily being respected either. Yeah. And then, and I'm just saying from the men's perspective of coaching quite a few gentlemen on and talking about this topic is, so with you going through it and being able to speak, with such detail about it, what would you offer or say to some of the women that could be exhibiting some of these behavior traits to the men and aren't listening?
This is really hard question for me, because as a wife, okay, I think I'm probably one of the few old school types that still believes in that, what people call the old role. The man is a man, the woman's a woman. I want to be feminine, be masculine. And now it's like, wait, what is that? Right. So in my marriage, because I didn't even know that that's what it was, I just thought he was moody. And because of my faith, I actually worked really hard to pray harder for him. I would ask God to help me have more forgiveness. And I really tried to be the better wife, thinking maybe if I was better, he wouldn't get like that. So I never saw it for what it really was. Like, I can't say that I knew he was a narcissist. I can't say that I knew that these were behaviors. I saw the pattern, but I also just prayed for him to change. I tried to love him more. I tried to forgive him more. So I didn't even know what was going on. And here's the thing. The part that's different for me is I would pray to God, like change his heart, change his heart. I knew that God was calling me to do things. I knew I would never be able to do them in that marriage, but I prayed to change his heart, but I never wanted to leave. And so I'm very clear when I say, when God calls you, he did change his heart, and he gave him a heart attack and he died. And that gave me my freedom. But I didn't even know what to do with my freedom because I never looked at it as a marriage to get out of, because I didn't even really know that I was being that emotionally abused until he was gone. And now I'm like, I was even addicted to the pattern, but it was gone. So my viewpoint on it, I think, is very different, because I never sat down with him to say like you've got narcissistic traits, like how are we doing this? Like so I
The
tried
times
to
were different too, right? Now you're a little bit more accessible to the internet. Now people can go look up any symptom to anything and
yes,
diagnose anybody on web.
yes,
So yeah, you
that's
definitely
true.
have to be more careful nowadays.
Yeah. So I never really looked at a way to resolve it. We stayed in the fight. Put it that way. We stayed in the fight. I accepted him for who he was. I hated how I felt on a regular basis. I packed on like 50 pounds. I became very introverted. People always ask me now, they're like, you were such a powerhouse. How did that happen? But while I was in it, I still tried to be the good wife, and I wasn't going to leave. And I think God knew, like, girl, this is going to kill you. So we got to fix this. And I don't mean that his life wasn't as valuable. I think his time ran out. I think that his actions caused him so much stress and anxiety. He had a heart attack at 49. So on that, it's really hard, because I can talk about what it's like to be in it, but I can't give you the experience of what it's like to pack your bags and leave. I can tell you what it felt like to heal and discover affairs and lies after he was dead, but I don't know what that feels like for them to still be here and cut that cord, if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. So with that being said, so you do know what it's like to give grace. So what would you say if now, knowing in hindsight, that threshold of giving somebody grace? Because it sounds like you gave him so much grace, but at no point did you give yourself enough grace. Does that make sense, to try to figure something out for you, and maybe possibly, a better road ahead? But you only know what you know. But I'm saying at this point, on the other side of this, and somebody's listening to them, what's something, and because I'm sure you maybe replayed some things back in your mind, a point where you were like, man, you know what? This is the point where things aren't going to get better. This should have been enough. And I'm sure there were probably many times. But just right. Yeah, just what I mean, just something that you could probably share, that somebody can probably resonate that's watching this right now.
Well, here's one in the very beginning. Okay. Number one, we went to 2 different counselors, and because I tried to get us counseling, and the first one we went to was a male, and he was wrong. He didn't like him. He was on my side, not his side. So I said, okay, you don't like him, then you pick one. So then he picked a female. We went to that one time. He didn't like her either. So we even tried, to go to counseling, but the counselors were wrong to him. But in the very beginning, and this is where I want to tell, if people are in this relationship, in the very beginning, I had every single sense within me saying, this is not a good situation. This is not a good, there's nothing good here. I could feel it. But because I knew him from way back, and because I felt like we had a history and we could be friends and stuff, I still trusted him. But I also was grieving. So the first thing I can say is, to anyone that is dealing with loss of any kind and grieving something emotional, some sort of big change in life, that is not the time to pick a partner. Like it's just not the time to pick a partner, because you're not as strong in thinking clearly for yourself in that moment when you're dealing with outside emotion stuff. So that was number one I did. My dad had died. And
hold on. What about the other side of the coin? You said pick one. What about leave one?
Pick one what?
You said not to pick a partner. I said, what about the other side of the coin? What about leaving a partner?
Probably the same. I mean, it basically goes into not making any life-changing decisions during that time. They even say that, like, after loss, like don't make a big purchase, or don't sell the home, like give it some time. So
life-altering decisions.
And so when he came into my life, it was literally when my dad died. And so I felt like, oh my gosh, there's someone that's there for me. There's somebody that I can confide in. And so because he knew that, he asked a lot of deep personal questions, and I was just like an open book. And I talked about things I was afraid of and things that made me sad and all this stuff. And so almost like within weeks, it seemed like that stuff was already being used against me. And I felt like, okay, this isn't, why are we fighting? Like, we're not even in a relationship. Like, why, like, what are we even fighting over? He was jealous about things. And then I'm like, look, we need to take a break. Like, I need to figure some things out. And then he started threatening suicide. And me being me, I have the biggest heart. Like, I don't want to hurt nobody. And so that sucked me right in. And from that moment, I was sucked in. So he threatened to kill himself on a hunting trip if I left him, because there's like nothing else for him to live for. And I'm just like, oh my God. I mean, it's so dramatic.
So
but
that's the point where they, they typically start to reach out and do things to keep the family together.
Yeah. And
and at some point, somebody winds up being the fixer in the relationship. So let me ask you, so you said counseling, the counseling didn't work out. Wasn't any other type of professional services or anything sought after? So, and with him not wanting to seek a counselor, was there any other alternatives, or there were no other alternatives that he was interested in?
His girlfriend.
Oh, okay. Self-soothing alternatives.
Well, yeah. It wasn't until he passed away that I found out she was there for 5 years. I didn't know. So all the times that he needed to go somewhere or was stomping out on me after I made dinner and didn't even want to eat. I mean, I don't know how many times he was with her, but so it would have never worked, No,
yeah, definitely. Well, yeah, definitely. Obviously, there were some other outliers and other things that were going on. So obviously with all these type of things, you see how it, this type of living can change a person, from different things, like you mentioned earlier, from anxiety, loss of confidence, and hypervigilance. So who was your alter ego, your Sasha Fierce? Who did you become in order to survive throughout that time frame?
Oh gosh.
Is that where Prosperity TV came from and all that other stuff?
Yeah. My alter ego is just coming out now.
Oh shit. Okay.
Yeah. Like now she's like, move over. I'm here now. But I'm trying to think like back then, I was a corporate leader. I was leader in a hospital system. I had a really good job. I led a very small team, so we were very close, and they became friends of mine. But I think I just dove myself in. I ended up closing my fitness studio of 14 years. And sometimes I look back and think, like, would I have done that if I wasn't in that relationship? I don't know. But I ended up having to get a job, and that even turned into a fight, because instead of celebrating my promotion, it was like, oh my gosh, you're going to meet some doctor and have an affair. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not
Right. A
even
lot of
working in the
projecting onto you.
hospital,
Yeah.
you know.
Projecting
But
those insecurities. Yeah.
yeah, so I think I just dove into like my leadership role, and I could go to work every day. And I can't even say like being a mom was something that absorbed my time. I mean, I was a mom and my sons were home, but once we were home, we were all on eggshells. So it was really hard. There wasn't a lot of joy and like family and warm
Right.
time. We kind of
Right.
all just like did our own thing. But my son saw me a lot in this state where I was trying to put a smile on.
Right.
So I don't really think I even tried to become anybody. Like I said, I couldn't recognize myself because I had gained so much weight. And so I didn't want to go nowhere, and I didn't want nobody to see me. I mean, I
Right.
was the fitness instructor. Like I was the one that could walk into my hair salon and my abs are showing through my t-shirt. Like they would be like, oh my God, we can like see your abs. And I'm like, well, what do you want me to do about it? And then now I'm like this little chub with all this goodness. And I just
Right.
wasn't very proud of myself. I wasn't. Mm-mm. So I don't know who I could say my alter ego became at that time.
Okay. All right. So you're no longer with corporate?
Nope.
Okay. And what gave you the comfort or the strength to leave corporate? Was it like kind of a list of things that were just kind of happening and you were just kind of making decision after decision, or does this tie into you saying don't make those type of decisions after grief and those other type of things?
No, what actually happened, and this was kind of where my faith piece comes in. Okay.
Um,
I was starting to talk back a little. Like I could hear God start saying, like, I had closed my business. I'm now at the as a corporate leader. I really couldn't handle the lack of growth and expansion there. And so I joined the John Maxwell team because I love John Maxwell. And I thought maybe this will give me an opportunity to bring different types of leadership into my area. So I still joined John Maxwell with the purpose of executive coaching and leadership development. And so my husband knew this. And even to do things like that, even though I made really good money, he wouldn't allow me to use money for that. I actually borrowed money from my mom to do that. And I'm a corporate leader. I mean, that's how much the money was controlled. But I knew God was calling me to something. And when God was like, you know what? It doesn't matter what stage you're on, the work you do is the same. And you push people to become better. So as a fitness instructor, that's what I did. But now he was telling me, you're just going to change stages. So I started feeling that conviction through God. Like he's like, you're going to write a book. It'll be called Broken Stronger. All this kind of stuff was going on. So I started finding my voice. I started finding my voice to say, this is what I want to do. And I'm going to need your support, because if not, like we may be at that crossroads. I started feeling really passionate because these weren't my ideas. I literally was hearing God talk to me.
right.
So we got to that point where, I did the John Maxwell thing, and I realized that the corporate, they didn't want none of that. And so I'm like, okay, it's time for me to leave. I've got to grow. This entrepreneurial thing that I've got is like suffocating. And so I told him, I'm going to leave my job, and you're going to have to just support us for at least a year while I get things going. And he was not happy about it, but I'm like, look, I have put up with a lot. This is something that I'm doing. And I left my job. I had my first retreat, and 8 weeks later is when he had his heart attack and then died. So it all happened that fast. So I had no job, and he was his business. So in a moment, like I had nothing, and I had to figure it out. Yeah.
Right, man. That's amazing, right? So, well, I guess I can't say that's amazing, but it's kind of a negative turn into a positive. Look at the glass as half full type of thing. So, I was going to say, people on the outside would say to you, why didn't you just leave? And it's always easy to ask somebody that, just like if somebody was, I guess because they don't see the punches, excuse me, the punches, the blows that you receive, because it's verbal abuse versus the physical abuse. Even though you still get beat down the same, even though you're emotionally drained, and the symptoms, if you're not aware of it, people might not acknowledge it, or just like we tend to tell the young men is, be stronger, be harder, be tougher. You know what I mean? And so if we can't identify these things, in the women that's going on, you definitely can't identify with them, when they're happening with the men. So I think that's why it's such, a disconnect that's out there. But, after having these kinds of conversations, I mean, what would you say that we can at least hope for, in having these kind of conversations?
I think the hope is that we can all feel safe to be honest. Especially if somebody has been in this type of a relationship and they've gone through work to heal and try to pull themselves back together. The reality is that until you get into another relationship, do you become aware of what still isn't healed, or what still has been maybe like 10 layers back. And like there's certain, and maybe, I don't know if you've gone through this or not, but when you go into a new relationship, you like, once you're on your own and you kind of get yourself stable and you feel good and you're confident, you're like, I'm free, I can do whatever, and I'm feeling good, and you feel really good, and you think now it's time, like, let me start talking to people. It's amazing at little things that can trigger something that maybe you didn't realize was still in there somewhere. And so I think to help people forward, it's to be open about things like that. You don't have to bash your partner, and you don't have to talk about all these things, but you could actually be honest and say, like, I had been in a relationship like this, so I'm just going to let you know there could be things that we might have to talk through at some point that are unexpected. I just think that that's something that we should talk about more, because you can't beat yourself up for it. Like it's the stuff impacted your makeup. Like it's part of who you are now. And I think if we can just be kinder to each other, but that's just my perspective on things. I mean, I don't know with you, Date, like if that has popped up for you or not.
But what I know, I agree, right? Because I would say those are the things that don't pop up. Some of the things people worry about, being so superficial. Again, you may be attracted to somebody because they look a certain way, or they dress a certain way, and all those things, which are great. But you know, getting into those other qualities that they have, just being a good human. You know what I mean? I think that's some of the things that people kind of get away from. Because people live vicariously online through these, taking these pictures with the filters and all these other different things. I mean, you don't really have to be your real self anymore. You can go online and be whoever the hell you want to be. And when you actually engage in conversation with somebody, a lot of times that's why people are so shallow and so depth. They don't have, anything to talk about. They don't have any life experiences, because everything just is so fast and so instant. And then when they go through things and they reach confrontation, they lack the problem solving skills, because it's so easy to just pretend to be somebody else and act like this shit never happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just go somewhere else and do something else. This cutoff culture that they have now.
Yeah.
Nobody's fixing any problems. Everybody's just like, fuck it and keep it moving. But
yeah. No. And I think one of the best things that we can do, like for ourselves and for the people that you want in your life, is to get really clear on your shit, like what you do. Like for me, right. I'm very clear, or with myself, to know that I take things sometimes negatively, so I'll get defensive without even knowing, did they mean to like come at me? Are they even coming at me? Is this just their way of delivery? But because of always bracing myself for that fight, and you want to protect yourself, I spent a lot of time realizing that I would come out like ready to go. And it's like, I didn't even mean nothing. And so I had to recognize that about myself, things that I had to work down. But as I would talk to people over the years, I became very clear that even if I was like kind of talking to somebody and if I identified something that it's like, you know what, I already know this won't work, so let's not waste nobody's time. Go on your way, I'll go on mine. Like everything's good, but you got to get really clear with yourself and how you respond and how you react and things. And I realized that about myself, that not everybody's out to get me. Not everybody's putting me down. I don't have to defend myself in every moment. And I think more people need to recognize those things about themselves so they can communicate that right away. I think it would save the other person a lot of, questioning and confusion and stuff like that.
No, absolutely. In a world of so much self-sabotage and self-doubt, it definitely should be some self-evaluation going on in there. And that way they can learn to trust themselves again.
Yeah, I had to realize I wasn't perfect.
Yeah. Right.
What? Who said?
Yeah. Man, this shit does stink. Yeah. Like boo, boo, boo. But yeah, now you got and once you start doing that, self-evaluating and learning to trust yourself again and going about giving yourself some grace, and then you can learn to heal from some of those things, or you can actually learn that you actually have some trauma and you haven't healed from some of those things, and that'll hint some of the defense mechanisms when somebody's saying something to you. If you're always getting defensive and you're always, being abrasive and embracing yourself for something, then maybe you should, again, look at the type of energy that you're putting out there into the universe, because, the type of energy you give, you get, it just doesn't happen that way. And I think a lot of us, just are unaware of that as well. Yeah. So let me ask you a question. If somebody's watching tonight and realizes, that they're living this way, what would you say the first step? Obviously awareness and identifying, but after that, what would you say they should be making steps towards?
To me, I wish I would have loved myself more. Okay. I wish that looking back, I would have realized that it didn't take sacrificing myself to be loved. And that's the thing. I felt like I had to give and do and be just for somebody to love me. And I realized that if I would have just spent time learning how to truly love myself, what did I want? What did I need? What does God have for me? How do I deserve to be treated? Like, kind of like it's in one of my books, it's looking at the experience through the lens of God's love. And God gives us free will. So I know that God's heart was hurting seeing me being treated that way. But I also know that God said, this is what you're choosing right now. Like you're still choosing this every day. And I'm going to love you anyway. And I think that if I would have loved myself enough to realize, like, let me try to look at this through the lens of God's love, he wouldn't have wanted that for me. And therefore, I shouldn't have wanted that for myself. So that's the first thing that I can say is if you're able to compromise everything that you believe in and you're able to sacrifice everything that, you've worked hard for, like if you're able to put yourself second, then anybody's going to put you second. And why? Like, why do you see yourself that way? And it took me a long time to do a lot of work on myself to actually love myself. And that required forgiveness of myself. But I think if people truly love themselves, they aren't going to stay. It's going to take a lot to leave, or it's going to take a lot to heal. But if you love yourself, like you should be the first and foremost focus. And to me, because of my faith, that I only got that strength through God. There was nothing anybody could have told me. There wasn't anything anybody could have done for me that would make me love myself. I had to just look at myself through the lens of God's love first in order to start seeing myself in that light. But like I said, I still didn't leave. My husband died. So that's very different.
One of the things we hadn't talked about was your support system. you talked about your faith, but was there a group of friends or family around that you just didn't listen to, or was it just were you isolated? What was it? Give us a little bit about that.
Um, there were certain things that maybe my mom saw a time or two. If she'd come over, talking about eggshells, walking on eggshells, like if she would come and visit, she would be on eggshells and not even know why. But the energy, like the energy in an environment like that is horrible, that anybody can feel it. That's
Right.
eggshells, right? So there were a couple instances where my mom, kind of wondered, and I would always be like, oh, mom, he just had a rough day at work, or, I would always make the excuse, or sometimes I would just sit out with my Modelo and be like, nah, he's just being an ass tonight. Like, just catch me, if I'm listening to music and drinking, then he's just being an asshole. But the other days was like, no, it's been a rough day at work. And then, but really, I isolated myself so much that anytime he did come around, oh my God, like he painted he had the greatest smile and everybody loved him, and he flaunted money around, and he always took care of everybody. So in everybody's eyes, he was like awesome. Like he was just Mr. Man, but he was very private. He worked all the time or was gone all the time. So we really didn't see anyone. That even some of my cousins would be like, why aren't you coming out with us anymore? I was social at one time, and then I just became isolated. So, my support system, I mean, there was none. When I go to work, when we were moving into our new house, I would tell, my team, this is kind of extreme, but we went and looked at appliances, carpet, paint, like all these things, and we picked out all this stuff together. Well, I come home from work, and he was a painting contractor. So I come home from work one day, and the whole house is painted, carpet is laid, and it was none of the stuff that we picked out together. None. No color, like nothing. And I'm like, what? Like, what the
Okay.
burner, like nothing. So I'm like, I guess I'm just staying here, right? Like, why even waste my time and get me excited about what this house is going to look like? I'm not even shitting. Like, you can't make that up. I come home and it's like, oh, yeah. Yeah. So I mean, that's just an insight as to there was not a support system.
No, definitely, obviously, right. So so times are different now, because I definitely, with the education piece, because back then, people weren't as educated on so many, different topics as they at least claim to be today, or at least, trying to go out there and search for information, at least putting, their best foot forward. But what healing starts the moment you start to, make someone else's emotions your responsibility. Would you say that once you started healing, because you mentioned your son, did you guys ever reconcile that relationship, or the actual interactions, engagement, when you thought it was just being a certain way, and then he understood, the way he was treating you made you feel a certain way, and kind of made your relationship better? For some of the moms that may be out there listening, that there might be some hope in reconciling relationships with sons.
With my sons?
Yes.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. I mean, we are like so close.
Okay.
And it's really cool. I mean, I'm the one that they call, we're very close. We're very tight knit, but we still talk about things. Like, we'll talk about things, and we're very open. We're very transparent. We will say it. We're not afraid to hurt each other's feelings at this point, because we know if feelings get hurt, then that means it's because there's something that needs discussed. But we talk about it very much. It's been good because my oldest son is in a relationship now. He'll be 25, and there are times where he's like, hey, mom, can we go to the gym? Because that's our place to talk. So, and my youngest, he's going to be 21. So, I mean, they're older now, but we have the best relationship. But it's been hard, because being 21 and 25, their friends are doing things in our, certain stages that they're not, because
Right.
we had to spend a lot of years kind of healing what sat dormant for so long, because we were all impacted by the trauma, and those were critical years for them. Those were those teenage years. And I feel like I checked out for a little bit, not even realizing that I was in such a dark place. So today, now, yeah, we talk about it. They've struggled with highs and lows. They've struggled with, not wanting to live and things like that. So it's not been an easy road. But as a mom, I carried a lot of guilt for that for a long time, because I thought, like, did my choices bring this on? Did that whole experience contribute to this? And, those are questions I won't ever know for sure. But all I can do is I did ask my sons for forgiveness. Like, I literally sat down with them and asked them for their forgiveness. And this was several years back. And so, yeah, we are close. We have our dance parties. Like, we see each other all the time. So it can heal. It can heal, but you can't just forget about it, and you can't brush it under a rug and say, like, oh, that's behind us, because no, even they carry the residue. Even they carry the little things that sometimes pop up. And if they want to talk about memories or things like that, we'll talk about it. Like, we'll go there. So we don't ignore it, but we're moving forward. But I did ask them for forgiveness.
No, I think that's important. Once you become a parent, one of the things you learn and you hear all the time is people always say there's no instruction manual on how to be a parent. And most people end up raising their kids how they wish they were raised, and possibly may create more harm than good. So everybody, at some point, we contribute inadvertently to how we raise our kids. What would you say to some of the men, the fathers out there, um, as a mom that went through that situation, and as we're trying to get this series off and talk about men speaking up and establishing relationships, and not just with significant others, but with kids, with other men, and just again trying to be better versions of ourselves. What would you extend to us? And then I'll get us out of here.
Yeah, for the men, like I said, I come from the place where I do believe the man should carry the masculinity and be strong, but you're human, and so I really feel like, give yourself permission to talk about the pain. I mean, when you're in a relationship with a narcissist, the pain that you experience can't be described, really, because it's so internal. And for the men that are going through that, there's almost like a stigma. Like, if you've been with a woman that has been, like, overpowering narcissistic, it's almost like men might feel weak, or men might feel like they weren't in that masculine place. But that narcissist shit is real. Like, it will break anybody down. And so I think the men that have gone through it need to realize, like, you're still the man. Like, you still have that role, and it's okay that you went through that. But let's talk about it. Like, let's build you back up. Let's support you. I think women need to be better. Like, when women do better, the men do better. When women do better, the kids do better. Like, women, we have a very important role. And even though we're in our feminine energy, we do take care of a lot of things. But I do believe, and maybe this is my old school teachings or whatnot, but I believe that we have that power to truly lift a man. Like, we can truly speak life into them. And so for the men, if you've been through it, don't be afraid to share that. Like, don't be afraid to let us know, because we want to help you. We want to see you step into that role that you're here. Like, you're here to be that. But I can't imagine a true narcissistic disorder female, like, in that full blown, because that's a powerful being, and that can be ugly. I mean, that can be a very ugly energy. And if a man has been exposed to that, they need to lift it. They need a lot of love from us women. And so it doesn't make you weak. It doesn't mean that you did something wrong. It's just a situation you were in. But if it broke you down, let us help you. Like, let us help you lift you back up, because we need you. We need you, and our sons need you. So I don't know if that helps or answers your question, but.
No, that was perfect. That was well said. I appreciate you. Thank you for showing up tonight. And, we're going to do big things and keep moving forward. So tonight wasn't about blaming anyone. Tonight was about recognizing patterns. If you saw yourself in this conversation, know this: you're not crazy. You're not weak. You're not alone. This is only the beginning of the Narcissist Series. The next episode is going to be, when did your intuition start whispering that something wasn't adding up? And why do we ignore it?
That was day one. No.
Yeah, right. The way you was looking at me was kind of crazy.
The way you texted me, I didn't like it.
Your emojis was off. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is Silent No More. Real conversations, real people, real healing. Out of here.
Thank you, guys.
Silent no more. I'm done fighting this war. What I feel in weakness is something worth fighting for. Silent no more. I'm unlocking the door. If strength is being honest, then I'm stronger than before.
This is your prosperity.